I never imagined our 10th anniversary would lead to this. Sarah and I had been through so much together, our love tested by the ups and downs of life, but we always came out stronger. Yet the secret I had been hiding threatened to unravel everything. It all started with a simple spring cleaning. Sarah was organizing the attic, sifting through old boxes of memories, when she found a yellowed envelope with her father's neat handwriting on the front. Curiosity got the best of her, and she opened it, discovering a contract that would change everything. When she confronted me, her eyes were filled with a mixture of confusion and betrayal. "David, what is this?" she demanded, waving the document in the air. I felt a chill run down my spine. I had hoped this day would never come, that the contract would remain buried and forgotten. Taking a deep breath, I tried to explain. "Sarah, please let me explain." The contract was something I had signed 10 years ago, just before our wedding. Sarah's father, a man of wealth and influence, had approached me with a proposition. He offered substantial financial provisions if I agreed to certain expectations regarding our marriage. At the time, I was young and eager to prove myself worthy of his daughter. I thought I could handle it, that it wouldn't come between us. I was wrong. "Why didn't you tell me?" Sarah's voice trembled with hurt. "Did you think I couldn't handle it, or did you not trust me?" "It's not that, Sarah," I pleaded. "I didn't want to burden you with this. Your father, he made it clear that this was for our benefit, for your future. I didn't see the harm in it back then." Tensions escalated as we delved deeper into the contents of the contract. The financial provisions were one thing, but the expectations outlined were suffocating. I had agreed to conditions that undermined our partnership, that made me feel like I was being controlled by her father's will. Sarah's eyes blazed with anger. "This is why you've been acting so strange lately. You've been trying to meet these expectations, haven't you? Trying to live up to some impossible standard he set for us." I nodded, ashamed. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want you to think less of me. Just as we began to piece together the extent of the contract's implications, another revelation surfaced. Sarah's father had manipulated me into signing it. It wasn't just a financial safeguard, it was a tool of control, a way for him to keep a hold on our lives. "He's been using us, Sarah," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "This was never about us. It was about him and his need to control everything." The realization hit Sarah hard. She had always seen her father as a loving, if somewhat overbearing figure, but now she saw the deeper truth. Family rivalries and hidden agendas had shaped our marriage from the start. Fueled by a mixture of anger and betrayal, Sarah decided to confront her father. She stormed into his study, the contract clutched in her hand. "How could you do this to us?" she demanded, her voice shaking with emotion. Her father looked taken aback, but his expression quickly hardened. "Everything I did was for your own good, Sarah. David needed to prove himself." "No," Sarah shot back. "This was never about us. This was about you and your need to control everything. You've manipulated us for 10 years, and I won't stand for it any longer." The confrontation left Sarah and me reeling. We returned home, the weight of the truth heavy on our shoulders. We knew our marriage faced the ultimate test of trust and loyalty. Could we navigate this deceit and come out stronger, or would it tear us apart? We spent countless hours talking, crying, and trying to understand each other's perspectives. We had to rebuild the trust that had been shattered, to find a way to move forward without the shadow of her father's manipulation hanging over us. In the end, it came down to a choice. We could let the contract and its implications destroy us, or we could choose to stand together stronger than ever. We chose the latter. Sarah and I decided to cut ties with her father's influence, to build a life based on our own terms. It wouldn't be easy, but we knew our love was worth fighting for. The contract might have been a shadow over our past, but it would not define our future. As we stood together, ready to face whatever came next, I realized that our love had been tested in the most profound way possible. We had uncovered the truth, faced our fears, and emerged stronger. Our marriage had survived the ultimate test, and we were ready to build a future together, free from the chains of the past. I never imagined that my life would unravel so quickly. Just a few months ago, I was a typical teenager, preoccupied with school, friends, and the occasional sibling squabble with Mia. But everything changed when Mom died suddenly. One day she was here, the next she was gone, leaving a void that felt impossible to fill. Mark, our stepfather, stepped into the role of caretaker, though he always seemed more like a shadow than a father figure. He was distant and reserved, a man of few words. I never really knew what to make of him, but Mom trusted him, and that was enough for me until it wasn't. As we settled into our new routine, I found myself spending more and more time in the attic. It was my escape from the grief that threatened to swallow me whole. That's where I stumbled upon the letters. Old, yellowed with age, and hidden in a dusty box at the back of the attic. Curiosity got the best of me, and I began to read. The letters revealed a side of Mark I had never known, a passionate, secretive side. They were addressed to Mom's best friend, Angela, and detailed an affair that had begun years ago. The affair wasn't just a fleeting romance, it was intense and scandalous, filled with promises and regrets. My heart pounded as I read on, realizing that this affair had continued up until Mom's death. Mia, you need to see this. I said one evening, clutching a handful of the letters. She looked up from her homework, her eyes skeptical. What is it now, Alex? She asked, her tone dripping with annoyance. It's about Mark. And Mom, I found these letters. She cut me off with a dismissive wave. You're always trying to find something wrong with him. Just stop, okay? He's trying his best. No, Mia, you don't understand. I insisted. These letters. Mark was having an affair with Angela. It was still going on when Mom died. Her face twisted in disbelief. That's ridiculous. Mom would have known. She trusted him. Read them yourself, I said, thrusting the letters into her hands. She hesitated, then slowly began to read. Her expression shifted from annoyance to confusion and finally to a kind of resigned sadness. Even if this is true, what are we supposed to do about it? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. We need to confront him. We deserve the truth. Mom deserves the truth. Mia shook her head. You're just going to make things worse. He's all we have now. Despite her reluctance, I knew we couldn't ignore what I had discovered. The truth had to come out no matter the cost. That night after Mia had gone to bed, I approached Mark. He was sitting in the living room, staring at a framed photo of Mom. Mark, we need to talk, I said, my voice trembling. He looked up, his eyes weary. What is it, Alex? I took a deep breath and handed him one of the letters. I found these in the attic. You need to explain. For a moment, he just stared at the letter, his face unreadable. Then he sighed, a long, heavy sound. I suppose it was only a matter of time. His confession came slowly, painfully. Yes, he had loved Angela, but he had loved Mom too, in his own way. The affair had been a terrible mistake, one that he regretted deeply. He claimed it had nothing to do with Mom's death, but the timing was too suspicious to ignore. Mia and I were left reeling, our world shattered once again. The man we had relied on, the man who was supposed to be our protector, had betrayed us in the worst possible way. We argued, we cried, and for a while it seemed like the truth would tear us apart. But as the days turned into weeks, we began to realize that we needed each other more than ever. Mia, despite her initial disbelief, stood by me. Together we confronted Mark, demanding accountability, demanding answers. It wasn't easy, and it certainly wasn't pretty, but it was necessary. In the end, we learned to navigate the complexities of our grief and our fractured family dynamic. Mark's betrayal was a wound that would never fully heal, but it also forced us to confront the blurred lines between truth and perception. We couldn't change the past, but we could choose how to move forward. Whether we would ever truly reconcile with Mark remained to be seen. But one thing was certain, the legacy of our stepfather's secrets had changed us forever. And in that change, we found a new kind of strength, the strength that came from facing the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I was sitting in my office when the call came. It was late afternoon, the sun casting long shadows across my desk. My father's lawyer, Mr. Collins, sounded unusually somber. Jake, I have some bad news. Your father passed away this morning. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My father, Robert Whitman, was a towering figure in the business world and in my life. He had built an empire from scratch, and though our relationship was complicated, I always admired his tenacity. My thoughts immediately turned to Sarah, my wife, who was at home preparing dinner. We had been married for 5 years, and she was my rock. When I arrived home, Sarah's face fell when she saw my expression. Jake, what's wrong? It's my father. He's gone. Sarah hugged me tightly, her warmth a small comfort in the storm of emotion swirling inside me. I'm so sorry, Jake. A week later, we gathered in my father's study for the reading of his will. The room was filled with dark mahogany furniture, and the air was thick with the scent of leather and old books. Mr. Collins stood at the head of the table, a thick envelope in his hand. As you all know, Robert Whitman was a successful and wealthy man. His estate is substantial, and his will outlines how he wished for it to be divided. Sarah squeezed my hand under the table, her presence a steadying force. Mr. Collins began reading the will, and as he went on, I felt a growing sense of unease. My father's estate was divided among several charities, his business partners, and distant relatives. But when it came to me, the inheritance was surprisingly small, almost negligible. Then, the bombshell dropped. Sarah was completely excluded from the will. This must be a mistake, I said, my voice trembling with anger. My father wouldn't do this to us. Mr. Collins shook his head. I'm afraid it's all legal and binding, Jake. I'm sorry. Sarah was uncharacteristically quiet on the drive home. When we walked into our house, she turned to me, her eyes filled with determination. Jake, something isn't right. Your father would never exclude us without a reason. We spent the next few days poring over financial records, legal documents, and old family correspondence. Sarah was relentless, and her investigative skills honed from years of managing her parents' business were impressive. One evening, she came to me with a folder in her hands. Jake, I found something. Inside the folder were copies of emails between my father and Sarah's parents. The correspondence was cryptic but suggested that they had influenced my father's decision regarding the will. Why would your parents do this? I asked, feeling a mixture of betrayal and confusion. Sarah's face hardened. I don't know, but I'm going to find out. The next morning, Sarah and I drove to her parents' house. They lived in a sprawling mansion on the outskirts of town, a testament to their own success. Sarah's father, Richard, greeted us at the door with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Jake, Sarah, to what do we owe this visit? Sarah didn't waste any time. We found the emails, Dad. Why did you and Mom manipulate Jake's father's will? Richard's smile faded and he glanced at his wife who had just entered the room. Sarah, you don't understand. Then help me understand, she demanded. They reluctantly led us into Richard's office, where he revealed a story that shook us to our core. Years ago, my father and Sarah's parents had been involved in a business venture that went south. To cover their losses, they embezzled funds from their own companies. When the scheme was on the brink of exposure, they made a pact to protect each other. My father found out Richard admitted he threatened to expose us unless we convinced him otherwise. We had no choice but to comply with his demands, and one of those demands was to exclude Sarah from his will. Armed with this new information, Sarah and I knew we had to take legal action. We hired a team of lawyers and began the arduous process of contesting the will. The courtroom became a battleground, and the case attracted media attention, turning our private struggle into a public spectacle. Sarah's parents hired their own legal team, and the courtroom was filled with tension as accusations flew back and forth. The stress took a toll on our marriage. Late-night strategy sessions replaced our intimate conversations, and the pressure strained our relationship to the breaking point. One evening, as we sat in our living room surrounded by legal documents, Sarah broke down in tears. Jake, I don't know how much more of this I can take. I held her close, feeling the weight of our situation pressing down on us. We'll get through this, Sarah. We have to. As the legal battle raged on, we continued to dig into the past. Sarah found an old journal belonging to her mother hidden away in a dusty attic. The journal detailed the embezzlement scheme and revealed a deeper betrayal. My father had been the mastermind behind the scheme, using Sarah's parents as pawns. He manipulated everyone, Sarah said, her voice trembling with anger, including us. The revelation was a bitter pill to swallow. My father, whom I had admired, was not the man I thought he was. The scandal ran deeper than we had ever imagined, and the implications for both our families were devastating. With this new evidence, our legal team presented a compelling case in court. The judge listened intently as we laid out the intricate web of deceit and betrayal that had entangled our families. The courtroom was silent as the judge deliberated, and when he finally spoke, his verdict was clear. The will is hereby declared null and void. The estate will be divided equitably between Jake Whitman and Sarah Whitman in accordance with Robert Whitman's original intentions. The relief was overwhelming, but it was tempered by the knowledge of the damage done. Our victory in court came at a high price, and the scars it left on our families would take a long time to heal. In the aftermath of the legal battle, Sarah and I faced the daunting task of rebuilding our lives. The truth had brought us closer in some ways, but it had also left deep wounds. We sought counseling to help us navigate the complexities of our emotions and to find a way to move forward together. Sarah's relationship with her parents was irrevocably damaged, and my perception of my father was forever changed. But through it all, we remained committed to each other. Our love had been tested in the most brutal way, and we emerged stronger for it. We decided to use a portion of the inheritance to start a foundation in my father's name, dedicated to supporting victims of financial fraud. It was our way of turning a painful legacy into something positive, a way to honor the good in my father while acknowledging his flaws. As we stood on the steps of the courthouse, looking out at the bright future ahead, I took Sarah's hand in mine. We've been through hell and back, but we made it. She smiled, her eyes filled with the strength and resilience that had carried us through. Yes, we did, and we'll keep moving forward together. Our journey was far from over, but we were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The inheritance dispute had brought to light the darkest parts of our family's histories, but it had also shown us the power of love, truth, and perseverance. And as we walked away from the courthouse, hand in hand, we knew that no matter what the future held, we would face it together, stronger and more united than ever before.